The war had started as an unexpected conflict, one that no one could have foreseen. Humanity had never been known for its military might in comparison to the alien civilizations that roamed the galaxy, each species more powerful and technologically advanced than the last. Yet, humanity had something that no other race had ever truly understood, a resilience that defied logic, a determination that could not be broken. And when the intergalactic alliance of superior species had decided to wage war on Earth, they underestimated what humans could accomplish when pushed to the edge. It began with a sudden attack from the Baratheons, an ancient species whose empire spanned thousands of star systems. They were known for their ruthless efficiency, their fleet capable of wiping out entire planets in a single strike. Humanity, unprepared and unaware of their impending threat, was caught off guard when a Baratheon fleet entered Earth's orbit without warning. The human military forces scrambled to defend their home, but they were no match for the Baratheon warship's advanced weaponry. Within hours, the planet was under siege. Major cities were destroyed in minutes, with the Baratheon fleet's plasma cannons decimating defenses that were once thought impenetrable. The world seemed on the brink of total annihilation. But as the flames of destruction spread across the globe, humanity did not yield. The people of Earth fought back with everything they had, not with superior technology, but with sheer willpower and resourcefulness. In the heart of the chaos, General Marcus Greaves, a battle-hardened veteran of many conflicts, stood on the front lines, rallying his troops. His face was grim as he surveyed the devastation unfolding before him, but his resolve never wavered. Despite the overwhelming odds, he knew one thing for certain: humanity had faced countless adversities before, and they had always found a way to survive. He refused to let this war be the one that ended their story. The humans' first victory came in the form of an unexpected counterattack. A ragtag fleet of civilians, soldiers, and engineers, using salvaged alien technology and makeshift weapons, managed to destroy one of the Baratheon command ships. It was a victory born out of desperation and ingenuity, a spark of hope in a seemingly hopeless war. The news of this victory spread quickly, fueling a fire within the hearts of humans across the world. No longer were they simply defending their planet, they were fighting for their very survival, and more importantly, they were fighting for their place in the galaxy. As the Baratheons regrouped, preparing for an even more devastating assault, humanity did the unthinkable. They began to adapt the alien technology they had salvaged, learning quickly how to turn the tables on their invaders. The world's best scientists, engineers, and military tacticians came together, pooling their knowledge and resources to create weapons and defenses that could match the might of the Baratheon fleet. In record time, they developed a new kind of spacecraft, faster, more agile, and capable of wielding devastating firepower. In underground bunkers and makeshift laboratories, humans worked day and night, refusing to give in to despair. The world watched as the first human-made warship, the Vanguard, was launched into space. It was a marvel of human ingenuity, its sleek design and advanced weaponry a testament to what could be achieved when humanity's survival was at stake. The Vanguard became a symbol of hope, a shining beacon that proved to the rest of the galaxy that humanity would not be easily defeated. The tide of war began to shift. The Baratheons, who had initially underestimated humanity, now found themselves facing an adversary unlike any they had encountered before. The human fleet, though still smaller in number, was now equipped with weapons capable of taking down even the most formidable of Baratheon ships. The Baratheons, who had once looked upon Earth as nothing more than a primitive world, began to realize that the humans they had dismissed as weak were in fact the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. As the war raged on, humanity's determination only grew stronger. Each victory, no matter how small, fueled their desire to push forward. General Greaves, leading his forces with unmatched skill and bravery, became a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit. The battles were fierce, the losses heavy, but the humans fought on, driven by a single, unshakable belief: they would never be defeated. And as the war reached its tipping point, with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, the Baratheons would soon learn the truth: they had underestimated humanity in the worst way possible. You said? The war that had seemed like a hopeless struggle for survival was beginning to turn in humanity's favor. The Baratheons, once confident in their technological superiority, were now facing an enemy that was fighting not just for survival but for something greater, an entire species' future. Every day, the human fleet grew stronger, and their tactics became more refined. It was as though the more the Baratheons pushed them, the more resilient humanity became. And now, with the vanguard leading the charge, the Baratheons could no longer afford to underestimate their human adversaries. General Marcus Greaves, now a celebrated hero among his people, continued to command his forces with an unwavering resolve. His tactics, while unconventional, proved to be highly effective. He had studied the Baratheon way of warfare and understood their strategies better than they did themselves. He knew that the Baratheons relied heavily on their superior firepower, but they lacked the adaptability that humans thrived on. Humans, after all, had survived through centuries of struggle, and their ability to think outside the box was something no alien force could predict. One of Greaves' most daring strategies came when he ordered a small fleet of human ships to infiltrate a Baratheon stronghold, a heavily defended space station where the Baratheon High Command was believed to be stationed. The mission was deemed suicidal by many of his officers, but Greaves saw it as the perfect opportunity to strike at the heart of the enemy's leadership. If they could take out the Baratheon High Command, it would be a devastating blow to their morale and their coordination. The human fleet, made up of a few dozen ships, slipped through the Baratheon defenses under the cover of darkness, relying on stealth and the element of surprise. The operation, codenamed Silent Fury, was a complete success. Against all odds, the humans managed to infiltrate the space station and plant explosives on the central command hub. Within hours, the Baratheon station was reduced to a smoldering ruin, and the Baratheon leadership was decimated. The loss of their high command sent shockwaves throughout the Baratheon fleet. For the first time since the war began, they were thrown into disarray. Their once perfect coordination faltered, and they struggled to reorganize. News of the Silent Fury operation spread quickly through human-controlled territories, sparking a wave of optimism. The impossible had been done, and it had proven that humanity, with its grit and determination, could achieve what others thought was unthinkable. The human war effort gained momentum, and planets that had once fallen to the Baratheons now began to rise in rebellion. The Baratheons, now scrambling to regain their footing, could feel the tide of war slipping from their grasp. But even as the Baratheons regrouped, humanity knew that the fight was far from over. The Baratheons still controlled the bulk of the galaxy's military might, and their wrath would be swift and unforgiving. The humans, though emboldened by their recent successes, knew they had to act quickly before the Baratheons could recover. In the midst of these pivotal moments, another human innovation emerged. A group of scientists and engineers, led by Dr. Lila Arden, a brilliant physicist and one of the leading minds in the human war effort, developed a groundbreaking new technology. It was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, an energy-based weapon that could disrupt the very fabric of a ship's energy core, rendering it powerless in a single strike. The weapon, known as the Phoenix Cannon, was capable of disabling Baratheon ships with surgical precision. It was still in its early stages, but it represented humanity's growing ability to level the playing field. With this new weapon in their arsenal, humanity was ready to take the fight directly to the Baratheon heart of their empire. The Phoenix Cannon was installed on the Vanguard and several other human warships, and the stage was set for the final phase of the war. General Greaves knew that they had to strike before the Baratheons could regroup completely, but the risks were high. The Baratheon homeworld, located deep within their heavily fortified core worlds, was known to be a fortress, a place where no one had ever breached its defenses. It was a mission that seemed impossible even by human standards. But Greaves, along with his most trusted officers, devised a plan to infiltrate the Baratheon homeworld and destroy the central command structure once and for all. The Phoenix Cannon would be humanity's final card, the weapon that could tip the balance in their favor once and for all. As the human fleet prepared for the most dangerous mission in the history of the war, General Greaves stood before his officers, his face grim but resolute. "We've come a long way," he said, his voice steady. "We've survived the worst they've thrown at us, and we've shown them that they made a mistake when they underestimated us. Now, we finish this. We take the fight to their doorstep and show them that humanity cannot be crushed. Not now. Not ever." The officers nodded, and for the first time in a long while, there was a sense of unity among them. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for victory. They were fighting for the future of humanity itself. The human fleet gathered at the edge of Baratheon space, a patchwork armada made up of every ship humanity could muster. From sleek warships to heavily modified freighters, every vessel was outfitted with the latest technology humanity had salvaged or created in their desperate struggle. In the center of the formation floated the Vanguard, a symbol of human defiance, its new phoenix cannon gleaming under the distant light of foreign stars. General Marcus Greaves stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring out at the darkness that lay before them. Somewhere beyond those stars was the Baratheon homeworld, the heart of their empire, and the key to ending the war. Dr. Lila Arden stood beside him, her sharp mind already racing through last-minute calculations. She knew the Phoenix cannon was powerful, but it had never been tested in a full-scale battle. There were risks, unknown variables, but there was no time left for hesitation. If they waited, the Baratheons would rebuild their fleet and crush humanity before they could ever strike again. Greaves gave the order and the fleet moved forward, slipping into enemy territory with steely determination. They traveled through asteroid fields and bypassed enemy patrols, relying on stealth technology and sheer nerve. Every ship in the fleet operated as part of a single entity, bound by the unbreakable will to survive and triumph. They reached the first line of Baratheon defenses faster than expected. A massive armada of enemy ships stood between them and the homeworld, their numbers overwhelming. Yet instead of retreating, the human fleet charged forward. The battle was brutal and immediate. Baratheon ships fired plasma cannons and energy torpedoes, lighting up the void with deadly brilliance. Human ships dodged and weaved through the storm, their newly developed weapons returning fire with savage accuracy. The Vanguard led the assault, its Phoenix cannon unleashing devastating blasts that tore through enemy ships. One by one, the Baratheon vessels fell, their advanced systems powerless against the raw innovation of human engineering. Still, the enemy numbers were staggering. For every Baratheon ship destroyed, another seemed to take its place. Greaves barked orders, coordinating the fleet with ruthless efficiency. He deployed squadrons of smaller ships to flank the enemy, cutting off their escape routes and forcing them into choke points where the larger human ships could destroy them more easily. The battle dragged on for hours, each moment a brutal test of endurance. Human ships took heavy damage, and the fleet grew thinner with every passing minute. Yet morale remained unshaken. Every loss was answered with a fierce counterattack. Every setback was met with renewed determination. As the dust of battle cleared, the remnants of the human fleet pushed through the debris field, battered but victorious. The path to the Baratheon homeworld now lay open before them. The homeworld was a sight to behold. A massive planet surrounded by defense platforms and orbital fortresses, each bristling with weapons capable of annihilating entire fleets. It was the crown jewel of the Baratheon Empire, the place where their leaders ruled with iron fists. If humanity could bring it down, the war would be over. Greaves wasted no time. He ordered the fleet into attack formation, targeting the nearest defense platforms. The Vanguard moved into position, preparing the Phoenix cannon for a full-scale assault. Dr. Arden monitored the weapon systems closely, her hands flying over the controls. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, a force powerful enough to change the course of history. As the first wave of Baratheon defenders moved to intercept them, the Phoenix cannon fired. A beam of pure, concentrated energy shot forth, cutting through enemy ships like a knife through paper. The orbital defenses crumbled under the onslaught, their shields useless against the sheer destructive force unleashed upon them. Humanity's fleet surged forward, striking with newfound momentum. They disabled defense platforms and destroyed communication hubs, crippling the enemy's ability to coordinate their response. Greaves directed the assault with surgical precision, using every tactic he had learned throughout the war. Hit-and-run attacks to keep the enemy off balance. Feigned retreats to lure them into traps. Sudden strikes at weak points in their defenses. But the Baratheons were not about to go down without a fight. Reinforcements poured in from nearby systems, and the battle around the homeworld intensified. The sky was ablaze with the fury of war, ships exploding in fiery blooms of destruction. In the chaos, a Baratheon dreadnought, the largest ship humanity had ever seen, emerged from the planet's atmosphere. It was a behemoth of metal and firepower, dwarfing even the Vanguard. It fired a barrage of energy blasts, each one powerful enough to destroy an entire fleet by itself. The human fleet reeled under the assault. Ships were torn apart, their wreckage littering the void. Morale wavered as the dreadnought pressed its advantage, threatening to turn the tide of battle. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Greaves made a decision. He ordered a direct assault on the dreadnought, leading the charge himself. He knew it was a gamble, perhaps even a suicide mission, but if they could bring down the dreadnought, the enemy's morale would be shattered once and for all. As the human ships closed in on the dreadnought, the battle entered its most desperate phase. Every gun was brought to bear. Every ship fought with the fury of desperation. And at the heart of it all, General Marcus Greaves led his people forward, determined to show the galaxy that humanity would never be defeated. The final confrontation had arrived. The human fleet, though battered and torn, stood resolute in the face of the Baratheon dreadnought. Every ship was a testament to human ingenuity, each one pushed to its limits by the weight of this single decisive battle. General Marcus Greaves stood at the helm of the Vanguard, eyes fixed on the immense enemy ship looming ahead, its massive weaponry trained on his fleet. The odds were overwhelming. Yet in the depths of his resolve, Greaves knew this was the moment to tip the scales. He couldn't afford to hesitate now. The Baratheon dreadnought unleashed a new wave of devastating energy blasts, and the human ship scrambled to evade, weaving through the firestorm. The Vanguard was struck multiple times, its shields flickering under the immense pressure, but the ship held together. The crew was unyielding, working with precision to keep their ship intact. The human fleet was heavily outnumbered, but they had one advantage: they had something the Baratheons could not match: human willpower. Every soldier, every engineer, every officer knew that the future of their species was on the line. Greaves issued the order for a full-scale assault on the dreadnought, the heart of the Baratheon war machine. The Vanguard led the charge, its engines roaring as it cut through the chaos of the battlefield. The surrounding human ships followed suit, forming a tight formation around their flagship, providing cover for the daring push forward. Greaves' voice echoed through the comm system, a rallying cry that resonated across every vessel: "This is for humanity. For the future of Earth. We will not go quietly." As the Vanguard neared the dreadnought, Dr. Lila Arden, standing beside Greaves, activated the Phoenix cannon once more. The weapon hummed with energy, its power surging in anticipation. The crew felt the weight of the moment, knowing that the next few seconds could decide the fate of their civilization. "Prepare to fire," Arden commanded, her voice calm but laced with urgency. The Phoenix cannon fired a beam of concentrated energy that cut through the void like a streak of lightning. It struck the dreadnought with such force that the massive ship's shields shattered instantly. The weapon punched through the hull, and explosions rippled through the Baratheon vessel. It was a blow that sent shockwaves through the battlefield, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. But the dreadnought was still alive, its remaining systems scrambling to stabilize the damage. It was down, but not out. The Baratheons, now realizing the threat posed by the Phoenix cannon, retaliated with everything they had. The dreadnought launched a counterstrike, unleashing a deadly barrage of energy missiles and plasma blasts in a last-ditch effort to wipe out the human fleet. Ships exploded in the blink of an eye, and debris scattered in every direction. The human fleet was being pushed back, but they refused to break. For every ship lost, there were 10 more charging forward in defiance. Greaves watched with a cold intensity as the human forces pressed on. "They won't stop," he muttered to himself, a grim smile tugging at his lips. The Baratheons had underestimated humanity's resilience before. Now, they would feel the full force of that mistake. In a final desperate maneuver, Greaves ordered the Vanguard to close in on the dreadnought. With no time to lose, the Vanguard surged forward, dodging incoming fire as it sped toward the Baratheon behemoth. The dreadnought's remaining weapons locked onto the Vanguard, but Greaves wasn't worried. His crew had trained for moments like this, and they were ready. As the two ships neared, the Vanguard fired another devastating burst from its Phoenix cannon, blasting a hole into the side of the dreadnought. The ship began to break apart, its energy core destabilizing. The Baratheons, now realizing they had no way to stop the human assault, attempted to disengage, but it was too late. The Vanguard made its final push, ramming into the heart of the dreadnought with all its remaining speed. The collision caused a massive explosion, shaking the very fabric of space itself. For a moment, everything went silent. The battlefield, once filled with the chaos of battle, was now eerily still. Greaves and his crew, battered and bloodied but unbowed, stood in the wake of the explosion, staring at the remnants of the Baratheon dreadnought. They had done it. They had struck the decisive blow that would change the course of the war. The Baratheons, their most formidable weapon destroyed, were now vulnerable. It was a victory, but it came at a steep price. The human fleet had suffered heavy casualties. Many ships were beyond repair, their crews lost in the explosion. Yet, as Greaves surveyed the damage, he couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had faced impossible odds, and they had emerged victorious. Humanity had proven that no force in the galaxy could stand against them. The battle was over, but the war was not yet won. The Baratheons, though crippled, were not entirely defeated. They would regroup, retreating to lick their wounds and regroup for a counteroffensive. But now, they knew one thing for certain: humanity could never be defeated. No matter how great the odds, no matter how powerful the enemy, humans would always find a way to fight back. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. As the human fleet regrouped, Greaves stood silently on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. The war had been won, but humanity's place in the galaxy was only just beginning to take shape. The universe was vast, filled with countless unknowns. But one thing was certain: humanity had proven that it would not be ruled, and it would never be defeated. The aftermath of the battle left a fragile peace hanging in the air, and for the first time since the Baratheons had arrived, humanity stood victorious. The destruction of the Baratheon dreadnought had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, and the message was clear: humanity would not be wiped out, no matter how hard the odds stacked against them. But victory came at a heavy cost. The human fleet, though triumphant, had suffered immense losses. Ships were scattered in pieces across the battlefield, and countless lives had been sacrificed. Yet, for every loss, there was a quiet, unspoken understanding among the survivors: they had done the impossible. They had proved to the galaxy that humans could not be broken. As the remains of the Baratheon fleet retreated, the human forces regrouped, salvaging what they could from the wreckage. The vanguard, though heavily damaged in the final assault, still stood proud among the remnants of the destroyed Baratheon ships. The crew aboard the flagship worked tirelessly to keep their ship operational, despite the extensive damage. Every man and woman on board knew that the war wasn't over, it had only just begun. General Marcus Greaves stood on the bridge of the vanguard, his eyes scanning the wreckage of the battlefield. His mind was already working, calculating the next steps. The Baratheons had been dealt a significant blow, but they were far from defeated. Greaves knew that Earth's victory would not come without more challenges. He had no illusions: this was just the beginning of a long struggle for humanity's place in the galaxy. "General, the Baratheon fleet is retreating to their home systems," a communications officer reported. "They've suffered heavy losses, but they're still formidable. It won't be long before they regroup and launch a counteroffensive." Greaves nodded grimly. "I expected as much. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. We need to press the advantage." Dr. Lila Arden, who had become an essential part of humanity's war effort, stepped forward. Her face was tired, but her eyes burned with determination. "We've developed several more prototypes based on the Phoenix cannon technology, General," she said, her voice steady. "If we can mass-produce these weapons and deploy them across the fleet, we might be able to neutralize any remaining Baratheon ships." "That's our next move," Greaves replied. "Get the tech to every fleet we can muster. We'll make sure the Baratheons understand that we're not just surviving anymore. We're ready to take the fight to them." As the human fleet began repairs and preparations for the next phase of the war, a new sense of unity swept through the ranks. The entire world watched as the human forces regrouped, their spirits lifted by the knowledge that they had struck a decisive blow. Earth's leaders called for solidarity, urging humanity to focus on rebuilding their strength and ensuring that the war effort would not falter. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy. The Baratheons, once confident in their superiority, were now shaken to their core. Their empire had been humiliated by a species they had long dismissed as weak and insignificant. The very idea that humanity, with its primitive technology and untested military power, could stand up to their might was an affront to the Baratheon ego. And as the war continued, the Baratheons would begin to realize that their underestimation of humanity had been their greatest mistake. On Earth, the war effort expanded. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders from all nations worked together, sharing their knowledge and resources in a united front. The global economy, which had been on the brink of collapse when the Baratheons first attacked, now found new purpose. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now churned out advanced military technologies, and Earth's space agencies worked tirelessly to develop the next generation of warships. Humanity's industrial might, once seen as a weakness compared to the Baratheons, had now become their greatest strength. The unity of the human race had never been stronger. The war had forged a bond between all people, regardless of their nationality or background. The stakes were no longer just about Earth's survival, they were about humanity's place in the galaxy, about showing the universe that Earth was no longer a backwater world, vulnerable to any invader who decided to test them. It was about proving that humans could adapt, survive, and ultimately, conquer. Despite the progress, the threat of a Baratheon counteroffensive loomed large. Greaves knew they would not have long before the Baratheon forces rebuilt their strength and launched a retaliatory strike. The human fleet, though victorious, was still small compared to the might of the Baratheons. But humanity had learned valuable lessons in the past months, lessons of adaptability, of perseverance, and of the unyielding spirit that no alien force could break. As the final preparations for the next stage of the war began, Greaves addressed the crew of the Vanguard. His face was hard, but his voice was filled with quiet confidence. "We've taken the fight to them," he said. "We've shown them what humans are capable of when backed into a corner. And now, we take the fight to their doorstep. We won't stop until we've secured our place in the stars. This war is far from over, but we're not the same species we were when this began. We've learned. We've adapted. And most importantly, we've proven that no matter what the galaxy throws at us, we can never be defeated." The crew of the Vanguard erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the ship. For the first time since the war began, the weight of uncertainty was replaced with a shared sense of purpose. Humanity had not only survived, they had proven their strength. And as the fleet prepared to launch its next offensive, there was no question in anyone's mind, this was humanity's moment. They had fought against impossible odds and emerged victorious, and now the galaxy would have to reckon with the fact that humans would never be conquered. The days that followed the battle were filled with activity as humanity geared up for the next phase of the war. The Vanguard and the rest of the surviving human fleet made repairs while newly designed ships were swiftly constructed in Earth's orbit. There was no time to waste. The Baratheons, though wounded, were regrouping, and the galaxy was watching. Every move the human fleet made now carried immense weight. The war wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about establishing humanity's place among the stars, proving to every alien species that Earth was not to be underestimated. General Greaves stood on the observation deck of the Vanguard, looking out at the endless void of space. The stars were distant, cold, and silent, a stark reminder of just how isolated humanity had been before this war. Now, though, humanity was at the forefront of galactic affairs. No longer just an insignificant speck in the universe, Earth had proven that it could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And yet, despite the victories, Greaves knew the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Dr. Lila Arden, who had been working tirelessly alongside engineers and scientists to refine the new Phoenix cannon designs, entered the observation room. She looked weary, her face drawn from countless hours of work, but her eyes were filled with determination. "We're ready to deploy the new weapons," she said, her voice calm but firm. "If we can hit their homeworld with this new generation of Phoenix cannons, we can cripple their military infrastructure for good. We've adapted the technology, and it's stronger than ever." Greaves nodded, appreciating the work that had gone into it. He had seen humanity's strength firsthand, but it was moments like these that reminded him of just how far they had come. "We'll need everything we've got," he said. "This next strike could be our only chance to end this once and for all. We can't afford another drawn-out war. We need to hit them where it hurts." The battle-hardened crews of the human fleet were already preparing for the assault. Every ship was now a symbol of humanity's resilience, its crews filled with a fire that could not be extinguished. The war had taken so much from them already, but it had also forged them into something stronger, something unified. And now, the stakes were higher than ever. The Baratheons were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for dominance, for their continued reign over the galaxy. But humanity, for all their flaws and imperfections, was fighting for something more, for freedom, for the future, and for the right to carve out a place in the stars. The newly designed Phoenix cannons were installed on the fleet's ships, and their power was tested on simulations before the final battle. The result was nothing short of astonishing. The new weapons were exponentially more powerful than their predecessors. The technology was still based on the same principles, but now it was fine-tuned to a point where it could bring entire planets to their knees. With the fleet ready and the weapons in place, General Greaves gathered his officers for one final briefing before the assault on the Baratheon homeworld. His voice was steady, his eyes focused, but there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the room. Every officer present had felt the weight of the war, the lives lost, the sacrifices made, but they had all come to one undeniable conclusion: humanity had earned the right to win. "This is it," Greaves said, his voice carrying across the room. "We've faced the Baratheons head-on, and we've proven that we can fight and win. But now, we take the fight to them, directly to the heart of their empire. We will strike at their homeworld, hit them where they least expect it. We'll use everything we've learned, every advantage we've gained. And we will finish this war." The room was silent for a moment as every officer absorbed the weight of Greaves' words. Then, with a single unified nod, they affirmed their commitment to the mission. They were ready. The fleet, now numbering several dozen ships, set its course for the Baratheon homeworld. As they traveled through the void, Greaves couldn't shake the feeling of determination that had settled over him. He had led humanity through the darkest days of the war, but now they were on the brink of something even greater. The battle ahead would not just be a fight for Earth's survival, it would be a fight for humanity's future. No matter the cost, they would see it through. The Baratheons had already begun reinforcing their homeworld, their defenses preparing for the inevitable human attack. Massive orbital defense platforms stood watch over the planet, and fleets of Baratheon warships patrolled the space around it. But humanity had learned how to adapt. The new Phoenix cannons weren't just powerful, they were precise. And with the human fleet's superior tactics and unity, they had every intention of tearing through the Baratheon defenses. As they entered the final stretch of their journey, the human fleet encountered resistance, scattered patrols of Baratheon ships that attempted to slow their advance. But these smaller ships were no match for the might of the human fleet. Every vessel, from the smallest fighter to the largest capital ship, worked together with incredible coordination. Greaves watched as enemy ships were picked apart, each move part of a greater strategy that unfolded with military precision. It was an exhilarating sight, watching humanity's ships move as one, crushing the remnants of Baratheon resistance. But the real test lay ahead, the planet itself. They were about to enter the heart of Baratheon space, and there would be no turning back. Greaves's gaze hardened as he stared at the massive defense platforms surrounding the Baratheon homeworld. They were formidable, their weapons designed to destroy entire fleets with a single shot. But humanity had something the Baratheons did not, the element of surprise. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, right on the doorstep of the Baratheon homeworld. They were met with a massive barrage of firepower, the Baratheon defenses opening up with full force. But this time, humanity was ready. The Phoenix cannons roared to life, their devastating beams cutting through the Baratheon defenses with pinpoint accuracy. The defense platforms crumbled under the barrage, their shields failing one by one. Human warships surged forward, cutting through the wreckage of the Baratheon fleet and clearing a path to the planet below. Greaves's heart raced as he gave the command to deploy the final wave. This was the moment. The Baratheon homeworld was within reach, and humanity's fate would be decided in the hours to come. The final assault on the Baratheon homeworld had begun, and the human fleet, fueled by determination and the memory of countless sacrifices, moved forward with unrelenting force. The Baratheon defenses, though formidable, had been caught off guard by the speed and precision of the human assault. Their once impenetrable orbital platforms were being torn apart by the Phoenix cannons, and their warships, though still numerous, were being picked off one by the coordinated human fleet. The tide of the battle was unmistakable, the Baratheons were losing. On the bridge of the vanguard, General Marcus Greaves stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the chaotic scene unfolding before him. The battle was intense, but Greaves felt a calm determination wash over him. This was the culmination of everything humanity had fought for. Every battle, every hardship, every loss had led to this moment. The fate of Earth and the future of humanity now rested on their shoulders, and they would not fail. General, Dr. Lila Arden called out from the tactical station, her voice sharp with focus. "We've breached their outer defenses. The planet is within our firing range." Greaves nodded. "Prepare the final strike. We've come this far, there's no turning back now." The fleet's remaining ships, now reinforced by the newly upgraded Phoenix cannons, formed a tight formation around the vanguard, their weapons primed and ready. The Baratheon homeworld loomed large on the viewports, its surface a dark and foreboding expanse. But to Greaves, it represented something more, a symbol of everything humanity had overcome, a final, decisive blow that would end the war. The Baratheons, desperate to hold their ground, unleashed a final barrage of firepower, their last-ditch effort to push back the human fleet. Plasma bursts and energy missiles rained down on the human ships, but the vanguard and the fleet's other vessels evaded the incoming fire with practiced precision. Every ship in the human fleet had been forged in the heat of battle, and now, they fought as one cohesive force, unstoppable in their mission. "We're in range," Arden reported, her fingers flying over the console. "Targeting the Baratheon capital and their energy core. One final strike should do it." Greaves's gaze hardened as he looked toward the planet. The Baratheons had underestimated humanity for far too long. They had believed that their superior technology and overwhelming numbers could crush Earth, but they had failed to realize one crucial thing: the strength of the human spirit. And now, it was time to prove that once and for all. "Fire the Phoenix cannons," Greaves commanded, his voice unwavering. The vanguard's cannons hummed with power as the immense energy stored within them was unleashed in a single, devastating burst. The beam of concentrated energy surged through space, cutting through the void with blinding intensity. It struck the Baratheon capital, a brilliant flash of light illuminating the planet's surface as the energy tore through the atmosphere and deep into the heart of their power grid. The impact was cataclysmic. On the Baratheon homeworld, massive shockwaves rippled through the planet, causing earthquakes and tsunamis. The capital city, once a symbol of Baratheon dominance, was obliterated in an instant, its towering structures reduced to rubble. The Baratheons had never seen anything like it. Their greatest weapon had been turned against them, and now their empire was crumbling from within. The human fleet watched in silence as the Baratheon capital burned, the sky above it illuminated with the aftermath of the Phoenix cannon's blast. Greaves's heart raced with a mixture of triumph and solemnity. This was the end of the war, but it was not a moment for celebration. It was a moment to honor the lives lost and the sacrifices made along the way. "We've done it," Arden said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked out at the devastation, the weight of the moment sinking in. Humanity's future is secure. But even as the vanguard and the other human ships prepared to return home, a new sense of unease crept over Greaves. The Baratheon Empire was shattered, but in the farthest reaches of space, their allies and remnants of their fleet would still be waiting to regroup. This victory, though decisive, was not the end of the conflict. It was a turning point, the moment when the tide of the war had shifted irrevocably in humanity's favor, but the true battle for the future of the galaxy had only just begun. As the vanguard began its retreat from the Baratheon system, Greaves turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for any further threats. We may have won the war, but the galaxy is vast, and we have only just begun to prove that humanity will not be conquered." The bridge crew, battered but resolute, nodded in agreement. They had fought alongside their fellow humans for this victory, and they would continue to do so as long as the galaxy remained a place of danger and uncertainty. And so, the human fleet turned its course toward home, leaving behind the smoldering remains of the Baratheon Empire. The war had proven one undeniable truth: humanity was not to be underestimated. The species that had once been confined to a single planet had now shown the galaxy that it could survive, adapt, and ultimately prevail against the greatest odds. But even as Greaves looked out at the distant stars, he knew that this was only the beginning of humanity's journey. The war was over, but the future was still unwritten. The galaxy was vast, filled with countless unknowns, and humanity had only just begun to explore its place within it. And whatever challenges lay ahead, Greaves knew one thing for certain: humanity would never be defeated.